Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. Alright, folks. The American people deserve transparency because of the historical significance. Donald Trump's home was raided, the former president of the United States. Of course, we wouldn't do this without good reason. And well, the reason is, oh well, thanks a lot. Epstein Judge Bruce Reinhart. That essentially clears the whole thing up now, doesn't it? Of course it doesn't. They continue to operate in secrecy with a total lack of transparency, and they expect us to take them seriously. Well, folks, with the release of the heavily redacted, and I mean, really heavily redacted affidavit, Democrats are all posting one specific paragraph and they're celebrating and rejoicing. I mean, we really got him this time, but I'm here to tell you why pretty much nothing has changed. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We've got some stuff to cover. So let's roll the tape. Alright, folks, so with a lot of the stuff, my favorite source, my go-to source, tends to be just the news. Let's take a look at what they're saying. FBI warrant for Trump's search relied on media reports like bungled Russia FISA warrant before it, like the Russia collusion FISA warrant before it. The FBI search warrant for Donald Trump's Florida estate relied on multiple news media reports from outlets such as Breitbart and CBS to justify its unprecedented request to raid a former president's home. For instance, the Bureau relied on a local CBS report to establish that Trump had moved boxes suspected to contain documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago in mid-January 2021, just before he left office, according to the partially redacted FBI affidavit. According to a CBS Miami article titled "Moving Trucks Spotted at Mar-a-Lago," published Monday, January 18, 2021. At least 2 moving trucks were observed at the premises on January 18, 2021, the memo related, and during my first read of the affidavit, this is the first thing that absolutely shocked me. I mean, they're literally quoting a CBS Miami article as probable cause or justification for this warrant: moving trucks spotted out of Mar-a-Lago days before Joe Biden's inauguration. Yeah, I mean, no Sherlock, Donald Trump has to move out of the White House and is moving to his now main residence in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. How is that probable cause for a crime? And once again, can somebody please, for the love of God, explain to me what the crime actually is? There is literally zero actual evidence to suggest any of that from what we understand right now, maybe behind the redacted portions, but from what I understand there was nothing to suggest any destruction of any documents. Then you read this part of the affidavit and it says 32 CFR Parts 2001 and 2003 regulate the handling of classified information. Specifically, 32 CFR 2001.43 titled "Storage" regulates the physical protection of classified information. This section describes that secret and top-secret information shall be stored in a General Service Administration-approved security container, a vault built to federal standard, or an open storage area construction in accordance with 2001-53. It also requires periodic inspection of that container and use of an intrusive detection system, among other things. So was the issue that Donald Trump was not storing the documents correctly? I mean, we already know that they had actually been to his home to make sure that he was storing the documents in a specific place. They told him to use specific locks. I mean, we've already covered all of this stuff. The question remains, what exactly is the violation? And still there is nothing to suggest, there is no argument that anyone has made to suggest that the documents that Donald Trump actually possessed were classified, or that he lacked the authority to actually hold said documents. Even Catherine Herridge, investigative reporter from CBS, writes key sections of NARA May 10 letter describe documents, quote, marked as classified or with classification markings, but this does not explain the record's current classification status. Again, it's all totally unclear. And even with the unsealed affidavit or the redacted affidavit, we still don't know what the actual issue is. CBS reporting on 2 moving trucks going back and forth Mar-a-Lago. Is that an impeachable offense where the documents and Donald Trump's possession that, classified or not, there's Donald Trump as president with a unilateral declassification powers, the right to view and hold declassified documents? Was he illegally in possession of documents? Was he storing them incorrectly? Again, we have absolutely no idea what even is the point of all this. There's another part here from the redacted affidavit that writes, based upon this investigation, I believe that the storage room former President of the United States residential suite Pine Hall, the 45 office, and other spaces within the premises are not currently authorized locations for the storage of classified information or NDI. Similarly, based upon this investigation, I do not believe that any spaces within the premises have been authorized for storage of classified information, at least since the end of former president's presidential administration on January 20, 2021. So what's the argument that after Joe Biden's inauguration, the former president of the United States is no longer authorized to store classified information or documents? I mean, is that what this whole thing was about? The Donald Trump was incorrectly holding documents or storing documents that the FBI was totally aware of and in communication with, and actually told him to put them in a specific room under lock and key, not to mention the horrific double standard that Hillary Clinton, who by the way was not president of the United States, definitely illegally had classified documents. She was laid off scot-free, but apparently the former president of the United States gets raided for improperly housing documents, supposedly, allegedly. The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. And it's even more confusing. Now, following the release of this affidavit, I mean, for Pete's sakes, they quoted a local CBS article in a Breitbart article has justification or as probable cause. Things were not clear before. And we were hoping that this affidavit would give us more information and more insight and help clear up what this whole thing was about. And if anything, it's made it more confusing. I see nothing in this highly redacted affidavit that changes my analysis that this whole thing seems like a massive nothing burger. And the one thing that Democrats are promoting as the smoking gun is the conclusion of the affidavit that suggests that there is probable cause that they believe that there's evidence, contraband, or fruits of crime or other illegally possessed documents. Well, obviously, the affidavit and the warrant is gonna say that. I mean, that's kind of the point of a warrant, that you believe that there's probable cause of illegal activity or wrongdoing. That's not a smoking gun. That's kind of the point of a warrant. It's kind of what you would say if you were applying for a warrant. The question is, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? And most importantly, right now, what's the damn crime in the first place? I still don't get it. And that's essentially the conclusion here, folks. More confusion. Democrats keep saying, look at the evidence, look at this new bombshell report, this new document drop, and I'm just not seeing anything. I'm seeing more left disc opium and the continued deep state coup against Donald Trump to stop him at any cost. Essentially, the status quo remains, nothing has changed. Donald Trump has called the Department of Justice and, first of all, according to this article, some Trump White House records were torn up and taped back together, National Archives says. Then the Department of Justice is looking into whether he destroyed records. Is there any evidence, video footage? Forget about people saying he did this. You're always going to find somebody saying that Trump did something without any evidence. Some Trump White House records were torn up and taped together, National Archives says. The National Archives said, what evidence do they have that? Did they see him tear up a piece of paper? Is it possible, God forbid, that someone else could have torn up a piece of paper? Is it possible that Trump tore up a note, a memo that he wrote? You mean a president can't tear up a memo that he writes, or that someone else tore it up? So Trump is actually being investigated for destroying government records? Possibly a note that he wrote in the Oval Office that he tore up, because, God forbid, 30,000 deleted emails on secret servers running outside of the United States government siphoning classified data? Well, that's okay. When they say, well, not prosecuting Trump would be a greater disservice to our democracy, fair. That's all right. You can disregard that here. This is James Comey. Although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, they already tore apart the rule of law, they already decided not to indict. They already weighed the cost. They already had a cost-benefit analysis of whether or not to indict, and if not indicting was worse. And they chose not to indict Clinton and Democrats in the spin. They spin it and they say, well, Comey entered politics, it was a cover-up. It was secret servers outside of the US government. You're going after Trump because people have said that he tore up pieces of paper. Okay, here's the difference. Clinton's team, and I want to. Hillary Trump 2024, I want to redo 2016, she should be the nominee, the Democratic Party, of course, I'd vote for Trump. But we need 2016 all over again. They cheated, Bernie Sanders blamed another country for finding out, but we'll just go on forever about that. Clinton had servers with top secret intel siphoned out of the United States government. For 4 years, classified data was swirling around outside the U.S. government. Comey admitted although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor brings such a case. How are you going to? They could possibly indict Trump. They could indict Trump on something he didn't do. See, they're desperate. 1,000 points down in the Dow, food prices going up. We're in a recession, 2 quarters of negative growth, the economy is shrinking, the housing market is going to absolutely tank a lot further. Interest rates are going to continue to go up while the economy shrinks. And then unfortunately, there will be layoffs. And then corporate profits, like Michael Burry was stating, they're going to decline because inflation is eventually going to hit. That it's already hit consumers, but it's eventually going to prevent consumers from paying higher prices. Corporations have been increasing the price of goods and services to offset inflation. Well, that's not going. Consumers eventually will say no, we can't do this anymore. Savings are being cut substantially by inflation. Inflation is a tax upon the poor, especially real wages are down 4.4%. And food prices continue to go up even though they said inflation went from 9.1% to 8.5%. So when you have inflation that remains at around 9%, corporate profits will decline. Corporate earnings will decline. You have the market that's about to tank, you're the housing market that is going to descend a lot further, interest rates are going to go up. This is all the doing of the Democratic Party. I mean split. You have the House, the Senate Democrat presidency, mashed potato brains Democrat. And so they started off with a horrendous economic policy. And then they were sued by oil and gas associations. Now they're sued by environmental groups, flooding, strategic petroleum reserves, and then you have oil prices. Brent is over 100. Brent crude is over $100 per barrel, like I said it would. And I predicted all of this in September and October of 2021. Read my Federalist article, but ladies and gentlemen, they're trying to get him on 2 statutes, especially. Okay. One is destroying records. But there's no evidence that he destroyed himself records. He didn't have a dedicated team of people breaking heartless, destroying hardware with hammers, like Madam Secretary. Okay. So where's the evidence that he destroyed records? Because the National Archives says it, because a revered government library said that he destroyed records based on a New York Times report, where they took a picture of a toilet bowl, and then there was a ripped up document there and they said, that's Trump. Trump put that document in the toilet. I mean, it's like these people are like they're out of their minds. But the Politico report in 2018, the former president unofficial filing system consisted of him ripping up papers and throwing them on the floor in the trash. Based on what evidence? There's no evidence with Trump. It's always just he did this. This is what people say. And then they investigate. Meanwhile, you have Hunter with 150 suspicious financial transactions and emails showing clear violations of the law, of course, that swept under the rug. But see, again, this is interesting because not only is he accused of destroying records where there's no evidence he destroyed records. Then the issue is the second statute that he can get criminally charged. Anyone who willfully or unlawfully conceals, removes, obliterates or destroys any records, maps, books. Okay, so, but he's the former president, so he can't get them on the Espionage Act, because he had those. He had those documents in his possession lawfully as the former president. If you want to say that he had a dispute with the National Archives, see, in a court of law, they want to indict Trump, they're gonna have to prove to a jury that he himself ripped those papers. They will not be able to prove to a jury that he himself destroyed any documents, because the Politico or New York Times or any report that accused him of actually ripping up documents doesn't show any video evidence. It's just a report that says people around him said he would do this. So what? They didn't indict him for trying to overthrow democracy, when he was accused of commandeering a limousine and throwing his dinner at the wall. They didn't. The Mueller probe that people on the left revere found nothing like nothing when they say, oh, well, there was a concerted effort to interfere, and there's a political article right before November 2016, said they found the man they always want to Trump. They were elevating Trump, Clinton's team and Democrats were elevating Trump because they thought he was unelectable. That didn't work out now, did it? Then they pivoted and said, oh, that's a Kremlin, or they want to Trump, then we have an invasion, while Democrats are in power. I thought it was supposed to happen when Trump was in power. But the statutes, if you look at the statutes, another CBS News article, it is also unclear how a central legal and the president's role in it could be really quickly. The Presidential Records Act does not list any prison time. There's no enforcement mechanism. So you can't get him on the Presidential Records Act. You can't get him on destroying documents, because there's no evidence he ripped apart documents. You really can't get them on illegally removing the classified data, because he said it's all declassified. He's a former president, he wants a library. And that's why he had those documents. But here it is also unclear on central legal question, the classification process and president's role. And it could be, as the New York Times points out, none of the statutes cited in the warrant rely on whether the records were classified or not. That's a problem for Garland. If the statutes don't involve the classification process, and it's just about illegal possession of government documents, he's the former president, the United States of America. So you're not only going to have to convince the jury that he himself destroyed records and that he himself had some kind of malicious intent to remove government documents that Clinton did. You wouldn't have to work hard. You had secret servers for 4 years. There was nothing secret with Trump into inherent to owning servers with the intent to hide Comey. That was a cover-up. So what Democrats will do is they'll take an obvious cover-up and they'll say she didn't find intent. Yeah. Comey is always on MSNBC and CNN and getting beautifully written lofty public relations pieces about him in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Well, of course, he went to bat for Clinton. He didn't enter politics and harm Clinton, it was Clinton's own behavior. This is the funny thing about Democrats. When they cheat Bernie Sanders at that point would have defeated Trump. They would have gotten. I mean, I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet corneas. According to the Huffington Post, I was the unofficial scribe of Sanders's most hardcore voters. According to Washington Post, I can tell you, I'm being objective. Now, I love Trump, I will vote for him 1,000,000 times. And if there's 1,000,000 chances to vote for him, but Bernie Sanders would have won, they would have gotten 3 liberal judges, they wouldn't have gotten dubs, but they didn't want to win with Bernie Sanders. They wanted to win with Clinton. And I said Clinton would lose to Trump. Once they cheated. Bernie Sanders then blamed the Kremlin for informing us to the DNC emails. This is what they always do. Their corruption, they spin into someone else's problem. So or a plot by another country to inform you of their corruption. So when Hunter's emails, that story breaks, it's actually what former Intel chiefs write a letter to Zuckerberg or to Twitter saying, gosh, we think this is, malicious information from another country. Then you have American companies suppressing an actual story, one of the most important stories of that year of any year, and so their corruption, like Hunter's, obvious violations of the law, is now turned into a plot by another country. Bernie Sanders being cheated by the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz being forced to resign. It's a plot by another country to inform you of how corrupt Democrats are, therefore, that another country is interfering. Still, they never looked at DNC servers. They said, oh, well, we confirm that our assessment is correct. They're confirming that an opinion is correct. They don't have any direct evidence. They indicted Russian intelligence officials based on Company 1. Company 1 was, of course, outsourced by the Democratic Party, just like the Steele dossier was, just like the whole entire thing was fabricated. Their corruption, they elevated Trump, they cheated Bernie Sanders, nothing worked out for them. Then they had years and years of the Mueller probe, couldn't find anything. They never indicted anyone for working alongside Russian intelligence officials. And so the thing is, what happened was what's happening now is they are on the ropes politically. They're going to lose the Senate also, not just the House, and they're going to be investigated for actual crimes, should they have to either indict Trump for crime he didn't commit or continue to investigate him forever on everything under the sun. They have 2 choices. And don't be surprised if they do indict Trump for something he didn't do. They've set him up and framed him for something he didn't do also. But Trump has caught Garland in numerous lies. There's no the presidential records doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. There was no intent to sell any documents or remove the documents unlawful. He was a former president with the power to classify and declassify, and there's no evidence at all, any one of the library, big deal. There's no evidence at all, and he was negotiating with the National Archives back and forth. So you can't say that there was some kind of nefarious diabolical plot by Trump. You can't prove to a jury that he wanted to, break the law as a former president who wanted a library. And the next thing is you can't prove that he destroyed the records. Just because somebody said he tore up records. There's no evidence of that. Where's the video evidence? Anything that Trump is accused of? He's guilty of but nothing that Clinton or Hunter is accused of. They're guilty of the people who say, not indicting Trump would be a terrible precedent. The precedent has always been set already and continues to be set with Hunter. Thanks for being here, folks. Big hug. Ciao. Goodbye. God bless.